Most stories treat the supernatural as an eruption of senseless chaos, monsters that strike without rhyme or reason, leaving victims at the mercy of random misfortune. However, ancient folklore suggests a much more structured reality. These entities often operate under a strict cosmic bureaucracy, functioning as a system that responds directly to the moral weight of human intent. Aditi, a young woman on a corporate retreat, found her life spiraling into a paranormal nightmare because she became the target of a relative's lethal envy. A specific human choice summoned her haunting. Across the world, a grieving husband sits in a quiet bar, attempting the unthinkable. He slides his signature across the table to a man in a three-piece suit, offering his soul to the devil to undo a fatal collision. Both scenarios cross the boundary between the mortal and the eternal. But because their catalysts are total opposites, malice versus selfless sacrifice, they trigger two entirely different sets of cosmic rules. Aditi's descent began during a standard training trip. Her team moved from the crowded markets of Hyderabad to the relative isolation of a service apartment in Goa. The isolation revealed horrific anomalies. Her colleague, Dev, was seen through a keyhole walking naked across the ceiling. Later, he was found catching and eating live birds in a graveyard at nearly 2 in the morning. The entity controlling him was no common ghost, but a high-ranking jinn. Those who saw its true form described a face charred beyond recognition and eyes that burned like embers. This jinn didn't arrive by accident. It was bound to the group through a lethal ritual commissioned by Aditi's jealous stepmother back in Delhi. She sought a tantric to weaponize the supernatural and remove Aditi from the family permanently. Dark magic operates on a chaotic mechanical rule. Once malicious intent is converted into raw energy to summon a jinn, the caster loses control. The energy shatters into erratic waves, striking unintended targets, which is why Dev became the vessel instead of Aditi. Malice is a blunt instrument. It functions less like a precise weapon and more like an infection that endangers everyone within the target's orbit. The husband's path was born of a different trauma. He watched as a truck crushed the sedan carrying his wife, leaving him with a survivor's guilt so heavy that it drove him to seek an audience with hell. He tells the devil he offers his soul gladly. There is no hesitation or attempt to negotiate a better deal. He simply wants to take her place in the grave. Then comes the supernatural subversion. The devil looks at the contract, listens to the man's story, and explicitly refuses to take the soul. This creates a paradox of sacrifice. When a human offers their life for another with no hidden agenda, pure love alters the soul. It loses the tarnish required for a demonic entity to claim ownership. Purified by the sacrifice, it becomes an invalid currency. It floats beyond the reach of the contract, snapping the scale and leaving the devil no legal grounds to collect. In the logic of the supernatural, utter selflessness is the ultimate armor. A soul willing to suffer for another becomes untouchable by hell's bureaucracy. To resolve these deadlocks, both parties had to seek out ancient spiritual authorities, forces that exist above the level of simple hauntings and demonic deals. Aditi survived the jinn's final assault because of the constant chanting and devotion of her colleague, Prem. His dedication to Lord Hanuman empowered a sacred thread that acted as a physical barrier the jinn could not cross. The devil, bound by the rules of his own trade, led the husband into a massive cavern of floating hourglasses to find a different kind of resolution for his sacrifice. Here they met Janus, the ancient entity of transitions. He holds the keys to the past and the future, watching the sands of every human life as they fall. Because the husband's intent was found noble by this higher hierarchy, Janus used a specific hourglass to literally turn back the clock, reviving the wife and resetting the timeline. True salvation in these realms is never a cheap trick. It is earned by proving one's moral purity to the cosmic authorities overseeing the system. The outcomes speak for themselves. The husband, through his willingness to die for his wife, brought her home. His sacrifice rewrote his reality. But for Aditi's stepmother and her tantric, the story ended in misery. By attempting to use a jinn as a weapon, they invited a chaotic energy into their lives that ultimately destroyed them. This contrast highlights the true nature of spiritual practice. While the stepmother used it for a petty grievance, the tradition was originally built for the welfare of humanity. When you distort that purpose for harm, you lose the protection of the laws that govern it. Folklore suggests the supernatural is a flawless mirror. It reflects our own moral compass back at us with terrifying precision. We are the architects of our own fates. We either use our malice to summon the monsters that will destroy us, or we possess the devotion required to change the very course of time.